Hi, I'm Stacy, owner of Montana Used Bricks. This video, I'm going to be very transparent about some things that happened in the last week. It was not the best week for me in regards to work and the business and just life in general. And I really did have a thought of, should I just give this up? In fact, I even said that to my husband. I said, maybe I should just give this up. It just does not seem to be going well for me this week. So this past week, I made quite a few mistakes. And the mistakes that were made were my mistakes. I don't want to call out any buyers because I know one of the buyers that I made a mistake on watches my videos, so I don't want to ever say anything that would hurt a seller or a buyer or anything like that. This is totally just my opinion of things that have happened this past week, and I would be interested if other Bricklink sellers have had the same thought of like, why am I doing this? I just want to explain some things that happened this past week. As a Bricklink seller, I always strive for perfection. I don't want to send out bad parts. I don't want to send out the wrong parts. I want to give the best quality used parts I can. And I've said this many, many times, being a used Lego seller, everybody has their own idea of what used is and how used a part will be when they send it out. I try to send out the very best. I try to send parts that I wouldn't mind getting myself. For the last couple of weeks, I've placed quite a few Bricklink orders, and there have been some where the parts were a bit questionable. It's not something that I would send out. It's not something that I wanted to use in the sets that I was building. But on the other hand, they were used parts, and everybody has their own definition of what used is. I would say 95%, 98% of the parts I get are perfectly fine. I'm happy with them and I'm willing to use them in my builds. But occasionally I get those parts that it's not even worth bothering the seller for because their idea of used is different than mine. That's all it is. And of course, as a seller, I'm always striving for that perfection because you never want to get a neutral or, God forbid, a negative feedback. And every time I get one of the emails of, oh, wait, you screwed up, not in those terms, but that's what happened, I panic because it's like, how can I fix this so the buyer is satisfied and I'm satisfied? Because a lot of times what the buyer wants is not necessarily what I think is fair. But at the same time, you don't want to do something that's gonna cause you to get that neutral or negative. And I had 3 mistakes this week. They were all mine. One of them, it's like, it's questionable. Again, it comes down to what do you consider used. One of them was a color error, and one of them was just not putting in the description of how the bricks looked. I do want to say that when I get those emails or messages that saying, hey, there was something wrong with my order, my gut reaction for the first millisecond, I'm not saying that I dwell on this, but my first millisecond of thought is, no, I didn't. But usually 99% of the time, yeah, I did. I screwed up. So I think that's just a gut reaction because you work so hard and you strive so hard to do your best that you don't want to admit that you made that mistake. And it's just that millisecond of when I first open the message. And then it's like, let me go take a look. Yeah, it's my fault. How can I fix this situation? The first 2 mistakes I made were costly mistakes. And the first one, I'm going to let you guys decide whether or not I actually made a mistake. We had a very expensive part. It was a pearl sand blue. It's a very unique part for a droid. And we actually got this droid from my coworker's collection. And we were so excited because it was a full one, which sells for like $50. It's like, oh yes, this is great. My husband started looking at it. One of the arms, the clip was broke, so we couldn't sell that one. He really looked over the torso and the legs and the remaining arm to make sure that the clips were good, everything looked good, there wasn't any scratches or anything like that on it. We sold the arm, which was awesome. We were so excited. It's like, oh yes, like a $17 part. We sold this part. I get an email telling me that there's a crack on it. It's like, a crack? But he sent pictures, and I'm gonna put the pictures up here. He shined a light through it, which my husband did not do when he was looking this over, and there is a crack on it. And I think this is one of those mistakes that is hard to avoid, because unless you're going to be shining a light through every part, looking at every little possibility of a crack, you're going to spend hours on just a few parts. And when you're trying to get thousands of parts into inventory, that's a little much. I don't blame the buyer for really checking this out, because it is a $17 part. He said that it's still workable and he only wanted a partial refund. I gave him a full refund because I felt bad that we weren't aware of what we were looking for when we sold that part. We'll definitely be more aware in the future of that. I also wanted to make sure that he was satisfied, because again, you don't want to get those neutral or negative feedback, because that really can hurt your store, especially when you're selling used parts and people are like, oh my gosh, look at all these neutral and negative about the quality of parts that they're selling. For me, I just went ahead and I gave him the money, but I think this is one of those that would have been really hard to avoid. The other mistake I made, which was also very costly to me, was a color mistake. And what really, really hurts me on this one is my husband pulled the order. I double checked it and neither one of us caught the mistake. And granted, it's a fairly easy mistake to make because it was a dark bluish piece that we sent and he wanted flat silver. Of course, the flat silver one was the more expensive one, and that's not the one that got sent. We didn't have that one. But this is something that we are always aware of. We're always trying to be careful to get the right color. This is why on the larger orders, we always do a double check to make sure that we're sending out the right color part. And the fact that we both missed this was just an eye-opener for both of us, that on some of those parts we need to be a lot more careful. And for me, and I know my husband doesn't do this, he admitted he doesn't do this as much as I do, but when I go to upload, if I see a part is a lot more than normal, I will go and double check that part to make sure that yes, I have the right color, I have the right part, I have the right variant for that part, especially if it's an expensive part. He didn't do that, and he admitted he didn't do that. He didn't see that it was an expensive part. He didn't double check it, and he didn't ask me, because he'll usually ask me if he's not sure. It's like, what color is this? We'll both determine what color it is. But he didn't do that, and the fact that neither one of us caught it during the pulling process is totally 100% our fault. And of course, I gave a refund for that. The third one is, again, this was totally on me. There was a couple of issues with a very large order. It was like a 900 part order. And there were some older bricks, the like 3001 old, those type of bricks. On those older bricks, I tend to keep them even if they're a little bit more marked up, if they're a little bit scratched, kind of faded a little bit. I will keep those just because they're older bricks and they're harder to come by. What I did not do that I should have done is put that in the comments. I did not do that. This person bought it and they were saying that they got these chewed up bricks. And I'm like, well, I don't sell chewed up bricks. What is she talking about? And I went and looked and it's like, oh yeah, they're the older ones. And I realized what had happened, and that was totally 100% on me. And then I think there was another part that was a gear that was missing some teeth, and I never would have thought to look to see if any of the teeth were missing. And I'll admit that that's another error on my part. When I'm putting stuff into inventory, I need to be more aware of that and be able to fix that. For me, when I get these mistakes, I will often ask for a picture. And this isn't just to say, oh, they're lying to me. Oh my gosh, I want to see what they're talking about. For me, when I ask for a picture, and I always put it this way, and I mean it 100% when I send it, is that I would like to know what the problem was so that we can avoid it in the future. I have had quite a few people that are more than willing to send me pictures so we can learn and we know what we're looking for going forward. And a lot of times once I get the picture, it's like, oh my gosh, how did I miss that? How did it go through the whole process of ending up in my store and being shipped without me noticing that it was broke or there was a piece missing off of it or whatever? And I usually feel really bad when we do mistakes like that. And I kind of brought this up at the beginning of the video that I've had some sellers that have sold me used parts that are questionable, but I've also had other sellers that have sent me parts that weren't correct, and they're very easy mistakes to make, especially when you're selling used parts or you're selling older parts that you're not familiar with. The first one that comes to mind is I had ordered some bars. I think they're like the patio bar. I can't remember exactly what they're called. I had ordered, I think, 3 or 4 of them, and one of them wasn't even Lego. It's one of those situations where I've been doing this long enough that as soon as I looked at it, I could tell the white was a little bit off from the normal Lego white. And then when I held the bars together, I could see that the ring around the top was smaller than the Lego ring. That one was not as obvious, and it's an easy mistake to make. Contacted the buyer, I sent him pictures so he would know going forward what to look for. And he was great about it and gave me a refund. It was totally fine. It didn't bother me at all. Another one that was kind of the same situation, this one has to do with visors. There's a standard visor, and then I believe there's a Technic minifig visor. And the problem with Bricklink is from the pictures, you can't tell them apart because there's no basis for comparison. But the standard one is really small and goes on a minifig, and the Technic visor is a little bit bigger. But if you're looking at the pictures on Bricklink, and I'll try to remember to put the pictures up here, you can't tell them apart because there's no size reference. And so I had ordered the Technic visor and I got a standard visor, and I felt bad for the seller actually because it's an easy mistake to make. So I contacted him and we worked it out and I got a refund for the part. So it wasn't a big deal. I wasn't even really upset because in both those situations, I totally understand how those mistakes could be made. And I think once the mistake has been made, I always apologize and I never ever give an excuse. It's so easy to get caught up in the excuse of, oh, I was really busy that day, or, oh, I had somebody helping me and they screwed up. It's really easy to get into those excuses, but as a buyer, you don't care about the excuse. You just want to know, what are you going to do to fix this error? And I never give an excuse of like, oh, it was a bad day, or the lighting was bad, or snowing outside and I was distracted. It doesn't matter. The buyer doesn't care. And so I never make an excuse. I just immediately apologize and say, this is what I'm going to do for you. I'm either going to send out the part that you should have gotten, or I'm going to refund for the part. I'm going to do whatever I can to make the buyer satisfied with the resolution of the mistake that I made. For the most part, when I have apologized to people, I would say 99% of the time, the buyers have been great, been very understanding, are happy with the resolution. Kindness goes a long way. I just feel like sometimes people get caught up in their own lives and it's really easy to be rude and not be as understanding. Luckily, the Lego community is a lot more understanding, especially people who have been doing this for a long time. And a lot of my buyers are also sellers, so they totally understand that these mistakes happen. And in the situation of being a buyer or a seller, kindness goes a long way. Just remember that people have other things going on in their life other than Lego. Just keep that in mind when you're responding. Always respond in kindness. I know when I buy parts and there's a mistake, I respond kindly. I try to point out something that was good about the order, like the fact that they had parts I had been really searching for. The packaging was really good. It was shipped quickly. And then I say, okay, however, there was this error in the part, but I want them to know that I am still happy with the order and that everything else was great. There was just this one little mistake. And I've noticed that quite a few of the people who contact me do the same thing. It's like, oh my gosh, thank you for all these parts, but I noticed that you sent the wrong color for this, or this was not the part that I ordered. A lot of times they're not even asking, what are you gonna do for me? It's more of, you know, hey, can I get a refund for this? Or can you possibly ship this out for me? There's a lot of respect going back and forth. I guess that's what it comes down to. I had these 3 mistakes, and these 3 mistakes, I got emails like within, I think, 36 hours. I had these 3 mistakes, and the third one, I looked at it at bedtime. I wasn't feeling good. I had tripped earlier in the day and tweaked my neck, and I was just not in the mood to deal with anything. And when that third one came in, I was almost in tears, and I told my husband, I said, maybe I should just give this up. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I don't want to be the seller that's getting the negative and neutral responses, and people are like, oh, I'm going to avoid that store. I don't want to be that store. Am I going to give this up? Probably not, because as many mistakes as I've made lately, I still enjoy this very much. I love the Lego community. I don't think you're ever going to meet a nicer group of people than people who build Lego. And I've actually met quite a few fans, adult fans of Lego lately, and it's really kind of boosted me a little bit of, oh, I'm not the only one in town that feels this way about Lego. I have been making quite a few mistakes lately. I'm going to admit that. I don't have an excuse for it. I could come up with all kinds of excuses, but there's really no excuse for some of the mistakes that I have been making. I guess because the Lego community is so good and you guys have been so awesome about giving me constructive criticism, do you really think I should give this up? I'm probably not going to, but I would love to hear your reasoning. If you're like, oh man, you've made too many mistakes, you're out of here, 3 strikes and you're out. Or if it's just one of those phases that you go through and everything will smooth out and things will go back on track. And I would also be interested if you felt this way. Why am I doing this? Because it does become a little bit stressful when you start making those mistakes. And what did you do to overcome it? Did you just keep going and try a little bit harder, double, triple, quadruple check your orders before they go out? What did you do to get in the mindset of this is really what I want to be doing? So will I give this up? No, I'm not going to be giving this up anytime soon. Will I strive to do better? Always. Always. I will always try to do a little bit better. I will try to make that next order better than the one before, and I'm always learning. So I appreciate those buyers that have been patient with me, that have sent me pictures and said, this is what you need to be looking for going forward. And just thank you, because this is something that I really do enjoy doing. It's just been, like I said, one of those weeks where everything's been off, and I really started having my doubts about whether I wanted to keep doing this. But as the week went on and things started to get better, I realized, yes, I want to be doing this. This is what I enjoy doing. And I'm really looking forward to, in the next 3 or 4 years, once I retire, making this a full-time thing. Okay, so this one was probably not as upbeat as most of my videos, but I appreciate you watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you really liked it, hit that subscribe button, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.